The migrant crisis in Hungary has reached a tipping point. Migrants are being forced off trains in Hungary by police, preventing them from getting to Western Europe. One family laid down on the tracks in protest.
Earlier, thousands of migrants crammed themselves into a train after police ended a two-day standoff at a Budapest station.
Charlie Daggett joins us now on the phone. Charlie, what is the situation like right now?
Well, we jumped on one of those trains that left Budapest this morning, packed with migrants. They weren't really sure where they were going to go. They just knew that they wouldn't want to stay in Budapest anymore. They were hoping not necessarily to get out of Hungary into places like Germany and Austria, but to at least get as far away from Budapest as they could. Now, on that earlier train that you saw, they only got about 20 minutes outside of Budapest when they were stopped by police and the migrants were pulled off the train. On the second train that we got on, they fared a little bit better, but the same ending. About 2 hours we were on that train. Then we reached this location short of the Austrian border, and there we were met with 4 buses and I can't tell you how many police. And all the migrants were then, there's no other word for it, they were herded off this train, and they were broken up into groups. At that point, they were patted down. There really wasn't much they could do. A few wanted to run. What they were hoping is that the train would stop and they would be able to get off and then, if necessary, go on by foot, which is how they've made a lot of this journey anyway, but that was not an option. So they were hopeful anyway, and certainly nobody told them if they got on these trains that they'd be taken to these holding camps. But that's exactly what happened here. They were let off the trains, heavy police force. The bags were taken from them. They were patted down. They were herded onto these buses. And even now, I'm describing the scene, there's probably 30 or 40 migrants, and they're made to sit down in this field right next to the railroad tracks. They're surrounded by armed police, and they're waiting to get on this last bus to that camp. And that's the last place they wanted to be. Their biggest fear is that they're going to be sent to these camps, and they're going to have to apply for asylum here in Hungary. And if they do that, they're afraid that places that they want to go to, like Germany, will reject them and say, look, you've already applied for political asylum in Hungary. We're sending you back.
Yeah, Charlie, we've just been looking at some heartbreaking images of these migrants, including a lot of children. Obviously, we saw that just terrible picture of that little child that washed up on the shores of Turkey there. So what is the European Union doing about this situation? What are they hoping to do to alleviate this crisis?
It's just chaos. It is. It's not just chaos throughout Europe. It's chaos in Hungary. There doesn't seem to be any system to deal with the migrants. And you make that point about the children. There are so many, even on the train that we were on, the number of young children and babies that are making this journey. And it's so tough for them, apart from how dangerous and difficult and deadly it was in the case of that little boy and his older brother in Turkey. But all the way along this journey, tiny babies in these cramped conditions. It's becoming a humanitarian crisis, certainly in Budapest, with the number of people that are there. And they just want to know how we can move on. There doesn't seem to be any kind of cohesive system that the Europeans have come up with, even in Hungary itself. Just to give you an idea how random this is, we get on the train, about 20 minutes outside, a number of migrants actually walked off that train. They were allowed to leave. We made 4 or 5 other stops, and they weren't allowed to leave. And the rest of them were corralled into these pens on this last stop. It's chaos even here. And throughout Europe, there's no cohesive policy. And that's what the migrants are so surprised. They thought they'd get here, and Europe would be the easy part.
Charlie, the group that you said you witnessed being herded off the trains, did that include women and children as well?
Not just children, babies. The number of tiny babies and infants that you see. These are young families, and you have to say to yourself, like, I'm a dad, I've got 2 kids. How bad would it be in where I'm living that I would take my children away from their homes and get them to a place and literally risk their lives in order for the promise of a better one in Europe? And you see them, and I look at them, and I look at the father's eyes, and I'm thinking, man, if those are my kids, I don't know that I would take those risks. But the number of small children, babies, kids under 3, 2 years old, toddlers, and some of them, it's a great adventure. But they're tired now. They've been traveling for 3 weeks. They've been stuck in that station in Budapest for at least a week. And kids can't take that. They can't take that for too long.
Yeah, and Charlie, just before we let you go, I mean, you've been speaking to the folks on the train there, and I think a lot of people are surprised because typically, Syria is not considered a poor country, and so a lot of the migrants that are coming from Syria and some other parts of the Middle East are really escaping from some very dire straits. What are they saying to you about what life is like back home?
Vlad, you make an excellent point. This is an excellent point because I think the perception is, boy, they're refugees. They're poor, they're in trouble. They're not poor. They're resourceful. They have some money. They're traveling. They know how to do things. They're successful in their own countries. The number of people who speak perfect English, you've seen them yourselves on reports that we've got. Things were so bad for them. They either felt that their lives were in fear, or in some cases their homes were destroyed. These are people on the front lines in places like Aleppo, in Idlib, in Kobani. You know these places because those are the battle zones. And I said, which is worse, Assad's forces or ISIS? And they said, there's nothing between them. They're both as bad as each other, but it's being fought in our backyards. And they would not have left unless the situation was deadly, not just an inconvenience or there's no future for them. Their lives were at risk, and those are the stories that they're telling us.
Charlie, two quick questions for you. Number one, have you been able to speak to any Hungarian official in a position of authority to get some answers as to where these people are going to be taken? And also, what do we know about these camps themselves? And along with that, where are you headed next?
Man, I wish I could answer that question. We have been begging authorities. When you speak to police here, they say, look, we don't know. We can't tell you. We can't talk to you. So we bump up to the next level. We want to talk to local police. We want to talk to ministers. And it's the very top level. The line out of the government is, this is EU rules. This is the way it works. You have to register for asylum in this country before we send you on to places like Germany, and they're getting pressure from Germany. That's their, I don't want to use the word excuse, but I can't find another one, for not letting the migrants continue. They're trying to stick to policy. As far as these guys and they're headed to these camps, I'm not allowed inside them, first of all. They're not allowed to leave those camps. But they're saying it's really rough conditions there. It's hot. There's not enough food. There's not enough water. They haven't got resources. This is a poor country. They haven't got enough resources, and they feel like prisoners. I mean, the person we spoke to earlier today said they're being treated like animals.
Charlie D'Agata in Budapest. Charlie, thank you so much for your reporting.